I'm Bruce Matson, and today we're going to talk about 4 quarterbacks that we can target in trades for Dynasty Fantasy Football as we get started into the offseason. But before we jump into this, make sure you smash that like button and then hit that subscribe button as well so you don't miss any of this Dynasty Fantasy Football content coming your way on this channel. But let's dive in. Let's look at these 4 quarterback prospects that we're looking to get in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And the first one's controversial right now because of the news that's rolling out, what happened from last week, and that is Justin Fields. He turns 24 in March, and in December ADP per DynastyLeagueFootball.com, he is the 62nd player off the board overall and is the QB7 in value. He led all quarterbacks with 160 rushing attempts, while also leading all quarterbacks with 4.4 scrambles per game, while also averaging 9.7 yards per scramble. So he's been efficient on the ground, been very productive, had over 1,000 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. He averaged 21.8 fantasy points per game in his last 6 games and was the QB5 in total points during that time. He has 10 QB1 games this year and was very productive. Even with the season starting off slow, he was able to rally and become one of the top quarterbacks in fantasy football. He scored 20 or more fantasy points in 9 games this season. Very productive, very stable, and the one thing to like about him is that there's plenty room for growth in the passing game, especially as this Bears team adds more assets to the wide receiver core and the offense in general. He averaged 193 air yards per game this season and 149.5 passing yards per game. We should see those numbers increase as he develops, as the offense develops, as they get more weapons around him. The elephant in the room here is the Bears getting the first overall pick and the chances that they could draft another quarterback, which could happen. That is in there, but that could also drive down the price in trade negotiations in your Dynasty Fantasy Football League. So if you've been interested in him, that is your chance to kick the tires and see if this scenario is impacting his dynasty value. Obviously, there's some risk involved because this could happen. He could get traded. They could just bring in another quarterback. But with risk comes high reward. And if they add pieces to this team and allow him to develop, we might get a generational quarterback that can be on your Dynasty Fantasy Football team for a long time. He's only 24 years old right now. Going to DynastyLeagueFootball.com and looking at the trade analyzer, and the trades going for him are pretty good. In their calculator, in 1 QB leagues, he's being traded for a late first-round pick. That's where he's being valued at in rookie drafts. So if you're looking to get him in your rookie draft or looking to use that as currency to figure out what you want to trade for him, late first-round pick-ish in 1 QB leagues. In Superflex, the value's through the roof. He's an expensive asset, as he should be, a young quarterback who's been productive. We're looking at the 101 and some change, or possibly like 2 mid first-round picks. Use that as a gauge. Kick the tires in your league to see what he's going for, and maybe the price is right for you. Maybe you can catch him for a discount, but use that as a gauge in trade negotiations. And if the Bears having the first overall pick is scaring you away and you do not want any part of Justin Fields, I have another young quarterback that you can shoot your shot on and will help you out for a long time. And I'm talking about Trevor Lawrence, the dandy coming out of the draft a couple years ago. Just 23 years old and was productive this year with 10 QB1 weeks, 6 QB1 games in his last 8 games, surpassed 250 passing yards in 8 games this year, 8 multi-touchdown games, so he's been productive. He's also been seeing a lot of volume, 8th among quarterbacks with 605 dropbacks, so getting opportunities to sling the rock downfield. After his Week 11th bye in his last 6 games, he averaged 261 passing yards per game, 11th among all quarterbacks, and this is just at 23 years old, so plenty of room to grow still, plenty of time for the Jaguars to keep stacking weapons, to keep adding to this team, and he's developing into what we thought he was going to be when he was coming out of the draft. He also completed 67.6% of his passes, which is very good for a young quarterback who is developing. The DLF trade analyzer over at dynastyleaguefootball.com has him valued as a late first round pick, just like Justin Fields. Similar value there. So if you're using rookie drafts as a currency to gauge what you want to trade for, late first round pick value in 1QB could bump up a little bit as well in most leagues. So I could see that as well. And Superflex, just as expensive. 101 and some change, 2 first rounders, somewhere around that range. Use that as a guideline when you're making your trade negotiations. Don't use that as an exact, but use that as a guideline for your currency in the trade market when you're analyzing which players and which picks you want to trade away for these guys. Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, they are both expensive. However, you get what you pay for, and we're looking at 2 young quarterback prospects here that are developing and looking good, and once you get them on your team, you don't have to worry about them for a long time. But if you want to get a discount on a young quarterback, I got one for you, and this guy was the talk of the town among fantasy football circles all off season last year. The injury really impacted him. No one's talking about him anymore, but people are still interested in him. But now you can strike at a cheaper price point in trades if you're interested. And I'm talking about Trey Lance from the 49ers. Has an ADP of 114.5. He turns 23 in May. Very young quarterback prospect. As we all know, he was carted off the field in week 2, had that ankle injury, but looks like he is going to be there for OTAs. That is what he's on track for. He'll be back this offseason. We'll see the camp clips, and everybody's going to start talking him up again. What we like about him is his rushing ability. Over at North Dakota State, he rushed for 1,100 yards in 2019. Not just rushing for a lot of yards, but he will truck over defenders as well, getting you good yards after contact. He has dropped 29 spots in ADP since September, presenting a potential discount in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And we're seeing that on the DLF trade analyzer with him being valued as a mid-first round pick in Superflex, around the 105 range. So when you're putting that against prospects, guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe the QB3 in the draft, maybe one of the top wide receivers. So Trey Lance versus one of those guys in Superflex. I look for that value to increase, especially when we get more in the offseason. We look back at some of these guys, some of these rosters, and we start propelling into the future. The trade analyzer has him valued as a late second round pick in 1QB leagues. That should increase to more like a mid to early second round range, considering the Konami code he presents with his rushing attack, getting you fantasy points with his rushing production. But right now, the value has dipped. We've seen it in ADP, we're seeing it on the trade market, and now it's time to strike if you like him, if you want to get him at a value. There is some ambiguity here for the 49ers at the quarterback position. They've wheeled in and out some quarterbacks that have been productive for them, has been able to hold down the fort. So there is some risk involved, but you're always going to be taking on risk when you're looking at players to trade for, and that's something you want to analyze when looking at Trey Lance. But if you want to go even cheaper and you want a stable veteran that can really help you out here in the near future and maybe for next few years, let's look at Jared Goff over at Detroit. And he was very productive this year, and his ADP has him very cheap. December ADP over at dynastyleaguefootball.com has him as the 219th player off the board and the QB 23. He's 28 years old. He still has some tread left on the tires. He finished the season with 4 QB1 weeks in his last 5 games. He ranked 9th among quarterbacks with 2,055 completed air yards and ranked 6th with 587 pass attempts. So the passing volume is there for him through the air and with attempts. That allows for fantasy production. Had over 4,000 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, and just 7 interceptions. He's been efficient, not turning the ball over, completed 65% of his passes, and 99.2 passer rating. So he looked good on the field this year. He's got some good weapons. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams could be the spark that ignites flames next season in this offense because he's got a lot of speed to burn, and you have a very explosive pass-catching running back with DeAndre Swift. DynastyLeagueFootball.com's trade analyzer has him valued as a third-round pick in 1QB leagues, maybe a late second-round pick if you want to get the deal done. In Superflex, he's a late first. That Superflex value is very expensive, but if you need a quarterback to patch things up, you need production, you need volume, you need stability. Jared Goff is the guy you may want to look at, especially if you want to look at it on the cheap. The elephant in the room with him is that his contract has a potential out right now, but honestly, it's hard to imagine Detroit moving on from him right now. There are rumors that they might trade for another quarterback, but considering what they got out of Goff, they may want to lean on him for the next few years until they want to go their separate ways. But right now, Goff is the guy for the Detroit Lions until they say otherwise, and we need to go and take advantage of this discount. These are 4 quarterbacks that you can target via trade this offseason, all of them in different range of values, all of them in different parts of their career. Go after the quarterback that you're interested in. Also, let me know in the comments below who you're trying to get in trade this year, which quarterback you're after, or if there's another position that you're hoping to land via trade. I want to hear about it. But on the way out, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Really helps out the channel, and you're not going to miss any of this great content. I want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.